Well, hello friends. It is a calm afternoon at the moment, and I want to plant the two containers at the front of my driveway, plant a couple spirea to fill in the flower bed on the one side. And I thought, you know what, let's bring you along because it's such a beautiful time right now. It's slightly overcast, light breeze, but perfect outdoor gardening weather. Kip is watching us from the yard. He didn't want to be with us today, but he's watching us. If you remember, these are the two new flower beds I put in last summer and planted them with mostly perennials, and look how well that color is doing. I don't usually have a ton of color, but this color is doing so well. We are getting the cat's pajamas, Nepeta, beautiful. The Millennium Allium will bloom later on here in the year. The Russian sage is just beginning to start, and then we have some beautiful Globemaster Allium that will bloom soon too. If you don't remember these beds, I did a beautiful kind of wave of different colors, and they go in groups of 5. I always think 5s or 3s, but usually more is more. So 5s is usually my go-to, and I have 5 allium, the Millennium, and then the cat's pajamas, and then go back and forth between that pattern. And right now it's a sea of color. And you can see I even put some up around my house because I loved it so much. We have some just beginning here, some bald cypress to push back out. They're really late always in bringing out their beautiful green, but it's coming. These Skyland spruce are so fun with the yellow, and they're getting their little new tips on the ends of them, which I love. But what we're focused on today are these containers. I have 2 urns, one on either side of my driveway, on a limestone plinth, and I like to plant them with something that can take the brutal sun, a beating, and not much water. So I'm gonna use 2 starts of pencil cactus that I have. And these are taken from a mother plant I have. And if you remember, this last winter, if you were following along in my stories, I had a major mishap in my plant room where the heat went off for close to 24 hours. And so quite a few things don't look good or didn't make it. The large mother plant of this beautiful, beautiful specimen, it is knocked all the way back to the ground. But these 2, thankfully, are starts I had a few years ago started, and they're gonna look really good. Now, animals, you have to be really careful when you have pencil cactus. They can be very toxic to animals. So I keep these way far away from anything up high, nothing gets to them. And you just have to know how to take care of them and what to watch for. But they can take dry weather. They can take full beating hot sun all summer long, and that to me is such a win. So you're gonna see what I picked to plant underneath them, and the plant themselves are both really good for this hard, harsh area where I just have to hand water it. I bring water out if I'm gonna water it, so I wanna choose something that can really take care of itself. I had to take a quick break for rain. It rained a little bit, but we're back. What I have done is placed each of the pencil cactus in the urns. Now, what I love about saving plants year to year is 1, it saves money. 2, you get bigger and bigger plants every year because you're saving them so they're able to grow and grow instead of throwing at them out like annuals. Also, what's great is you would think the roots would get too big eventually to handle, but since I will remove these in the fall and plant them in a plastic container and then put them back in these year after year, you kind of control the roots. So every year when I dig them up, it controls the roots, it cuts them off slightly, keeps them a certain size, which is really easy to manage. So these alone actually would be very structural, but I do like to put some annuals around them, and you can see remnants of last year's annuals. I did the Royal Flush Senecio, and honestly I have starts of this in my plant room that I'll probably use, but even this like little start right here, it will root and that will eventually be a plant. You can see I did some lemon coral. I'm gonna do lemon coral again. Now I did not have these by the entry last year. I had these back by my garden. They grew a little bit. I think they're a little bit larger. You can see there's one here I need to cut out. But now I think they're gonna look really fun up here by the front. They're just kind of a unique, I like to have unique, interesting things. I just don't like to have run of the mill. So let's pick some annuals, and I have them right here in the back of my gator. I have, of course, the lemon coral sedum. I always like to do some succulents out here because they just do so well in the dry, hot sun. So I'm gonna do some string of dolphins. They're just so pretty, and they do so well for me out here, and year to year I can save starts of them. And then I'll probably do again, which you've seen me use it, but some Moses in the Cradle. That's kind of the street name for it. You know, there's always street names, and then there's the true name. I go by street names because it's just easier in what I remember. But this stuff is super easy. You can also save starts of this if you want to, but I'm gonna start potting these up. I already have amended the soil with the biotone and some plant tone, so it's ready to go. So now you can see on each side we have these gorgeous full urns. Now what I do want to show you, and it's true on the other side too, is I mound the soil just slightly when I am doing small urns like this. These urns are not big. They do have drainage, so water can escape through the bottom very easily. I make sure to have mesh in there so the soil doesn't go through the hole, but all the water does. But they don't hold a lot of soil. That's again why I pick things that don't need too much water. And I do slightly mound that soil as I'm planting, and then when I water it here, I'll clean off the edges. But you can see how beautiful and full they are, how just like easy and nice they are. And that's really what I try to go for, is easy and nice and full. And they just kind of complement what's planted underneath with the cat's pajamas, the purple, and all that goes together, which I really like. And then that bright pop of lemon coral, I love it. So now what I want to do is plant a couple, I'm going to call them old school spirea. There are new tons of spirea, and then there is a very traditional old spirea, what I call bridal wreath. And you don't see it too much anymore because not too many people use it, but I'm going to talk about why I'm using it up here. These two beds flank either side of my driveway. They give me some privacy, but they also are just kind of a nice entry point. You can see it's a busy road. I have lots of people driving by, and I like to, one, just kind of counteract that noise a little bit with plantings. That's why I have over on the other side of the road, lots of arborvitae trees I've planted all along the front. And then in these new beds with these skyland spruce that will get big someday, I want to plant some more things that will give me a barrier, be hardy, be good in the harsh elements out here, full wind, full sun, and just kind of look nice at different times of the year. So bridal wreath spirea, old school spirea. Like in the Midwest, traditionally, most farms would have had some version of this spirea somewhere, whether just in front of their house, whatever it was. There weren't all the different hybrids and all the different varieties there are now. But what is great about these spirea is they are hardy, they're reliable, they grow, they get a nice size to them. They're just green foliage during the summer, but in the spring, and I'll see if I can find a picture and post it here on this video, in the spring, they get the most beautiful water-falling white flowers all over them, and they just bloom year after year. You can control their size, but they can get 8 foot plus if you let them to, if you just kind of let them grow on their own. But I'm planting them right here as a screen. So right here you can see there's kind of a hole in this bed. I have some skyland spruce on either side, but in the middle, I want something that will get tall and give me just easy green growth. Spirea. So I have the holes dug, and what you're gonna notice is I already put some biotone down into that hole. That's always what I'm gonna use, is just a starter fertilizer for those roots. You see me do it pretty much on everything. Once you start using it, you start noticing results. That's why I keep using it. Now, what's great about these spirea is they're really low cost too. So this is an area that's close to an electrical pole. Someday in the future, they could definitely need to either work on that, replace it. So I'm choosing some things close to that pole that wouldn't be expensive if they did have to either get ripped out or moved later on because of work being done. That's something I try to think about when I'm planting. I don't want to have it be ruined in the future, because you do always have to think of companies having the right of way to work on electrical poles, underground wiring or water, or whatever it is where you live. So what I do with these is when I pull them out, I want to make sure I look at those roots. You can see they're slightly root bound, but not too bad. So I like to just pull off some of that bottom soil, and I'm just making sure I expose some of those roots. And then I want to make sure I plant it no deeper than it currently was in its container, which this is just about perfect. You can see it's sitting really at the same level. I don't like to plant anything too deep, even a shrub, a tree, everything, because if you plant it too deep, it suffocates those roots. It sounds counterintuitive, but if the soil sits too high on that root flare, no matter what the plant, it can slowly just suffocate it. So now all I do is put that soil back around it. I'm gonna move on to the second one then and do it, and these two are gonna be ready to go. So within a short time, I planted spirea, 3 of them. I always like to do odd numbers. I'm sure many of you do that too, just because odd numbers in design, no matter if it's landscape design, your indoor home, odd numbers will always be more pleasing. They make you feel more comfortable. They just feel more correct. So we got the 2 planters up front done. I'm gonna quick run over and let's plant. I have a couple planters at Mom's. I want to plant in front of her front porch, and I keep thinking I'm gonna get it done and I haven't, so this is a good time before it rains again, because I think I hear rumblings, so we better go do it. We're in front of my mom's front porch. So this is a north-facing spot. And north-facing can usually mean full sun, but in this instance, it actually means it gets some late afternoon, really bright light, if not a little bit of full sun. Last year I found what worked best here was caladium. I hadn't tried caladium before. We'd done different things over the years and they always were decent, but the caladium took off and they really were able to give a pop of color, a bright pop of color, even from the road, and still look really good. They were able to handle some sun, which I like. And then the mixture we found just really works best up here. And you know, it's one of those things where over the years, if you have spots in your garden, you're gonna find what works best. Some years things won't work as well. Some years things will work better. This is one of those tested trial and error areas where we have finally found in these 2 urns what works best, and we're gonna stick with it because it just happens to flourish and really give some nice color. I planted the first urn a couple days ago and you can see it's already looking really good. The caladium are party punch, so they actually really do have that punch of color, that bright red that really stands out, that fades into green with that splotchiness. You know, blooms are not the only thing that can have bright color. Things like this really offer something really fun. So then we have bridal veil on each side, which does offer some white, really fun little flowers that just kind of polka dot all around, but it cascades down these tall urns, which we really like. And then the same silver mist helichrysum that I use so often, it gives a nice white silvery foliage. And let me tell you something, in a north side in a little bit of shade, this stands out like a pop of bright color. It almost glows at night in moonlight. It's really pretty. And so the mixture of these 3 are really good. So we're gonna go now plant the remaining urn I have just to match these. What you're gonna notice is I am using 3 plants, which looks like a lot, but then I'm even planting more around it. I want these to be really full, really fill in, and just one of these small 4-inch pots will take quite a while to fill in. So I'm doing 3 of them in the center of this. I've already amended it with biotone and plant tone, and it has a little bit of rain on it. And you'll tell if you ever work with biotone or plant tone after rain, it starts breaking down, and that's normal. So don't be worried if you notice it's really kind of breaking down. That's what it's supposed to do. So I'm gonna make sure, caladium, honestly, every time I get them, seem to have a really nice root growth. So I always kind of break that up just a little bit. And you see how those roots instantly are going outwards? That's what I want. I want them to face outwards. I want them to grow laterally and want to send out new roots, which is why I do this. Just break them up and put them right into the soil. And that's the center now of my container. So on each side, I'm flanking it with the bridal veil. I find this just to be such an easy plant. You know, it's an old one. Some people find it boring, but guess what? Sometimes it's those boring plants that do best in weird areas. And I think we need to get out of the notion of always trying something completely different or trying the weirdest plant, because guess what? Sometimes those don't do well. And when you find one that works well, and if you like it, plant it. I think there's no problem with that at all. So on each side of this, I'm doing one of these because it's really gonna fill in and it's really going to start cascading down, which is what I want. In general, you notice I use a lot of vintage or antique urns like this one, the cast iron urn. The one drawback is they can be smaller. So you have to pick things that can handle their root growth to be together. So I do make sure not to get anything that has too vigorous of root growth, but is able to handle all these different items. Now I'm gonna put this helichrysum in front, and I may go put one in the back yet too, but we'll see how many I have left. I kind of like to make sure. But once everything is in there, instantly, we're ready to grow. So when you step back and you see everything together, we have some really fun all gold Japanese forest grass. One of my favorites for kind of a north side with some nice bright light. It really does well up here, and by the end of summer, this stuff is massive. We have bobo hydrangeas. They always do well up here. They're loaded with blooms in July. Then we have both green velvet and green mountain boxwood. So we'll have blooms on the hydrangeas that really take over this whole front. But then it will not be outdone by the beautiful caladium, the silver mist, which will really start bushing out. Same with the bridal veil. And these are 2 matching urns. So there's one there. And if we come over here, right there is a second one. And you can see already, look how that caladium, which just a couple days after planting, really starts perking up. It starts becoming fuller and it really starts filling out. That's exactly what you want. So I'll give you updates on these throughout the summer. So today we planted the 2 urns at my front entry. a few spirea in my flower bed, and then a couple urns here at Mom's, which is kind of like an entry too, because it's the beginning point, or when you're driving by, you really see these. And all of these are tried and true things that work for me. You know, I think each of us will find different things, but I hope we can always gain what maybe works for another person, maybe something we want to try out too. And don't be ever scared to do your own thing. Beat to your own drum. That's what I do. I don't garden for other people. I garden for myself, and I think you need to do that too. So as always, if you love the video, if you enjoy the video or learn something, share it around. Someone else might too. And check my website, wiseguy.com, for not only some garden items, but even more so, that's where all my recipes are, my food items, what I preserve from what I grow in the garden. It's all on the website. Happy gardening.